Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton. We all know that communication is the key to success in your business. Vital, real, strong communication will strengthen your sales, your management, your leadership, your customer service, and yes, your profits. On the Biz Communication Show every week, I bring you into our discussion a person who is internationally recognized as a communication leader. That's certainly true of our guest today, Kare Anderson from Sausalito, California. I call her the Sage of Sausalito, and that's with good reason. Kare is known as a speaker, an author, and a business consultant. She has many areas of expertise that we could talk about. Today, we're going to talk about business writing. And I jotted this down. Without Kare's help, your business writing can bring confusion, conflict, and chaos. But with Kare's help, your business writing will generate clarity, cooperation, and consensus. So it's a delight and a privilege today to welcome Kare Anderson. Hello, Kare.
Hello, it's so good to be talking with you again, Bill.
It's great to have you here. As I look back, I'd like to go with some of the basics. As I mentioned, you're a prolific writer. You're also, behind that, you are an inveterate reader. You read constantly. All of your articles are packed with real solid information and research, and yet you write so clearly as well. I'd like to go back to asking, what was it that generated your interest in writing? And also, what kind of training or apprenticeship or study did you go through to develop your writing?
Well, as someone who was phobically shy and a stutterer growing up, it's a surprise to many of my friends that was a journalist and a speaker. The turning point for me was having a bureau chief at the Wall Street Journal who recognized talents in me I didn't see. He said, "When do people come alive when you interview them? When do they just get intense, negative or positive?" And he's the one who said, "You pull people in by an example." And so my writing, one of the biggest things that he taught me is you start with a specific example because the specific proves a general conclusion, but not the reverse. So that started me on the path, I guess, of the power of writing. It's never easy, but it's satisfying.
And you have become known for some of your key phrases, say it better, and moving from me to we. And of course, that prompts me to mention what I didn't mention in the introduction, in addition to finding your many articles, such as for Huffington Post and Forbes and Wall Street Journal. You have written books as well. Let's get to some specific tips for business leaders. One of the things that I found during my 20 years in management, and I still find it as I work with corporations as a consultant, I find that many managers, supervisors, and CEOs think that they have given clear instructions. But the people who are reading those instructions have a totally different viewpoint. So when you are working with leaders or you're working with groups in a business as their consultant, how do you help them get to the point where they write instructions that people can read, understand, and follow?
That's a great question. And it's something that comes up a lot. And many people don't realize, as you indicated, that they're not clear. There's a book called Rookie Smarts. I think it's really helpful when an expert is writing something to have somebody who's not familiar with it at all and say, "Do you understand this?" What do you think you'll do? Short sentences, specific, concrete, sequential. Those are things that are very important. And it's one of the other reasons you should have friends and colleagues at work and outside of work who can give you candid feedback and say, well, which part most interested you? Because it's not just being clear so people understand, but being compelling so they actually want to follow it. There's a self-interest for them in doing so.
Certainly, I would imagine you have worked with companies on helping them improve their use of email. I remember so well in 1996 when my twin brother called me one day, and we were living in different cities, which we still do. And he said, "Do you have email?" And I said, "What's email?" He said, "That's electronic mail." I said, "Where do you get it? At the post office?" I mean, we all remember when it was very, very new. Now, of course, it is central to any organization's operation. So what are some of the problems that you have found with email usage among companies that you work with? How do you help them go through them?
I think one of the things I say is reverse engineer. What is the end goal of this email? How clear do you make it? And is there an action you want them to take so that you can find out if they were persuaded and they did understand it? I believe in specificity and brevity. So in emails, you hit one of my hot buttons. So I just want to say this. I get so many emails from professional PR people. They give masses of information about something they want me to do with enough data that makes it clear they don't know what I write about. And I think the same thing is true in companies. Write to the person you're wanting to reach. So I believe in customized and brevity. Because of your work and because of your background and because you're working on this project, these are 3 things I'd like to consider are doing together, you might say in a company. Or here's why I'd like to ask you to come to work on our team. Or I would welcome your brief feedback within the next week, see concreteness, about what we're doing so far. Anything that gives that specificity and brevity and self-interest and showing you stepped out of your shoes to try to make it relevant to the other person. Those are the keys I think that are often missing. And the feedback that's positive that happens so soon after people do that, that's a reinforcer. They think, and it's sort of like being a dry alcoholic. You get upset when other people don't stop drinking. What I've noticed in companies when I'm working with cross-functional teams and some of them start doing these things, they start to get irritated that other people don't do it. And I said, well, you might mention to them the specific lessons rather than criticizing what they're doing. Yeah.
2 points there particularly stand out for me. One is audience analysis, which of course you and I both go through as professional speakers. We need to do that in the business setting as well as on a platform with an audience. If you write something in an email that almost has a "to whom it may concern" approach to it, that's not going to hit home. And then I would go ahead and certainly underscore what you say about brevity. Many people just get carried away with emails. It may be some of the same people who get carried away with talking. And you get these pages and pages of emails. Now, this brings me to ask another question regarding email. I was in management when email came along. One of the dangers I felt about email, with all its advantages, and I know there are many advantages, but one of the disadvantages or fears that I had about it was that people would reduce their face-to-face communication because of email. And sometimes even on critical and maybe even highly personal issues, when they didn't want to confront the person, when they were saying it, they would send an email instead. I suppose you caution against those types of practices.
I do, and I think a mix of both email and in-person is vital, especially with so many global companies with whom I work and you do. I think there's something visceral in our expressions and our responses. What I say to them is meeting in person can be worse and better You're going to get feelings. You're going to get nuances. You're going to misinterpret what other people are saying with their expressions. But it's important to be able to have the back and forth. So the very things that make a good email, reverse engineering, saying, our goal out of this meeting, or our goal with what we're talking about now, I think is this. What is the top goal for you? Confirming. And say, in light of that, let's come up with our best option, or whatever the goal is. So I think context is important. In person, and even as we're doing here with Zoom, the opportunity to have the flow back and forth, to see the hesitations, to see people get excited or the resistance, those can help us hone what we're doing. I believe in a mix of sight, in person, and email.
Closely related to email, even though it came along later, would be texting. Give us your ideas about when and how we should use texting, and what possibly are some of the pitfalls we should be aware of.
Well, I'm probably old-fashioned at this because I get masses of texting that's not relevant and that's not timely. So my criteria is there an emergency? Is there a way we're meeting and think one person may not get there on time or whatever? Or is it brief just because they need to make a change that affects us? So I'm probably not doing as much texting as some people. And those are the limits I put on it for me.
In both texting and email, what advice do you give people about proofreading their work?
I think most of my advice has been hopeless and ignored because, we even have these little phrases about texting, excuse me. They sort of apologize that there might be something wrong. Just recently, I've gotten texts that were like 3 paragraphs long with a lot of errors. So I'm sort of letting go of trying to correct that.
Another thing, of course, is to make sure you send the text to the right person. That's something that most of us who do texting have slipped up on. And I would certainly caution people to be very, very careful in your proofing. I'm going to give you an example, Kare, that I don't believe I've shared with you before. Many times when I'm going to a meeting in Atlanta, which is an hour away from where I live in Gainesville, Georgia, my wife will want to know that I got there because of the intense traffic and all the accidents and the bad weather and what have you. So I will text her when I get there. Okay, one evening I arrived for an early evening meeting. I typed a text to her, and it's a darn good thing that I proofed it before I sent it, because what I intended to say was, got here just fine, having a great time. But as I looked at it, I wrote, got her just fine, having a great time. Now look, that's just one letter, only one letter that made a tremendous difference. And it's an acceptable word, so spell check is not going to catch it. With our emails and our text, if it's something that's of critical importance that's going out to a lot of people, it's not a bad idea to have some other eyes look at it, right?
I absolutely agree. And that just burst in my mind when you're saying it. There are some things that autocorrect to crude words. And because my name is Kare, I often get emails to Kate because that's more normal. But also even a similar problem and email, because you can click on the first letters of someone's email that you frequently send to, but it may scoot over to someone else you frequently send to, and you may be sending personal information that's totally inappropriate for them to receive. But most of all, I want to say, good for you for texting your wife to say you arrived safely. That is an important criteria.
Well, thank you. And you can be sure that nowadays I proof that every time, as luckily I did that time. Okay, what about websites? You look at a lot of company websites, and as a writing expert, what sort of recommendations do you give to your clients about websites?
I'm just glad I have other experts who I deeply admire who are good at websites. But I think the most important thing is, what's the main message you want them to get? How easy can they find it? And if they're interested, can they follow up? And you offer them something for free that is really solid, good information they can click on and get. So there's a sense of it. So having something that's visual, having triggers, I believe in a navigation bar that gives them options that are directly relevant. And of course, testimonials are vital. And for people where it's a service, being able to see someone in action that relates to your business, testimonials, action, actionable insights, specificity that reinforces what your core expertise is about.
How about the visual impact? What difference and how much improvement do good photos and nowadays even videos make for a website?
Well, ironically, I think short videos are going to be growing rapidly. In fact, the biggest growing area on Facebook. My favorite nephew, Josh Groth, he does 3 to 7 second videos for e-commerce companies, but they have to be actionable, interesting, and they do a sequence of them. They can immediately see which ones are most helpful and get a response. So that kind of brevity I'm not yet accustomed to, but I've been fascinated to watch. So there's a free app called Glooped. We can do 1-minute videos framed in text. So I think the combination of text and action and video is going to be vital as in the next decade.
Interesting how the length of videos has changed as far as the viewers. You and I can probably remember when video first came out, that is where people could produce their own videos. It was sort of fascinating, so we might watch a 20-minute video just very frequently. Now, this program lasts 20 minutes, and that's certainly the max. On regular viewing on the internet, you and I have seen the trend go from where someone would watch a 15-minute or 20-minute video ordinarily to where now if they see it's over 5 or 6 minutes, well, I just haven't got time for that. So what's the length video did you say your associate is producing?
3 to 7 seconds.
3 to 7 seconds.
But I believe that in behavioral research, once you take one action on behalf of belief, you're more likely to take more. So you can click to them. Like that Gloop thing I said, doing scene 1 and seeing it titled, if it's of interest, you may look at a bunch more. So get them to take a first action, make it relevant, and give them choices. Because when they have choices, they're more likely to click on one. I believe in situational selling as situational help. So instead of talking about your product, you might start by saying, if you're facing da, 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 then you may want to look at da or da. So that concreteness, I think, is something, it's a talent that's worth honing, as you already indicated.
Kare, we have time for just one more question, yet it is a vital one. How do you help companies and how do you help leaders get away from the business jargon that has become so prevalent? You and I both see, and I imagine you and I have both written articles about this, the hackneyed, trite phrases that people use, and they've used them so long they don't realize that they no longer have meaning. How do you handle that?
It's the curse of knowledge. Well, it happened inadvertently for me, doing short 40-minute coaching sessions with a group of 12 or less, but they're cross-departmental. I would say, what's a message that's vital for you to get across? Get actionable feedback, be pithy, have a thread to the conversation. So within 10 minutes, each person has gotten candid feedback about the way they characterize what they're trying to do. It also bonded people together. And since I believe one of the top problems in a company is people don't feel they're getting to do meaningful work with other people, using best talents together. So these cross-functional teams bonded so much that they went out and helped each other between my coaching sessions. So they could get increasingly candid. So overcoming the curse of knowledge, the best way to do is to get other people who care about making you better and feel that they're going to be cared for too. And in a company, that's a very, very important talent. You're spot on with that.
As usual, you say it better.
Coming from you, that's high honor. Thank you.
It has been fascinating, informative, and fun to talk with you today. And I'm happy to share this with our viewers. And not only do we have viewers, this becomes a podcast as well. So we welcome our listeners too. Certainly, I know before we go, there are those who would love to have your contact information. So share that with us now, please.
Well, go to sayitbetter.com, and there's a blog, Moving from Me to We. Since I want to make it a short path for you, you can search words in my blogs to find out the key areas that interest you most.
Very, very good. And believe me, there is and I'm going to be trite here, but there's a treasure trove of information that you will find. Also, be sure to spot regularly her articles on the social media. They are action-packed, they are insightful, they're interesting. You will love them. And now that Kare has given her contact information, I'm pleased to share mine. Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. And so quite logically, you can go to my website, bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to learn more about my services, sign up for my newsletter, and find my contact information to determine how I can assist you. Thanks again to everyone for being with us. And Kare Anderson, thank you once more.
High honor, a high honor to talk with you as always. And I follow your advice in writing where you said it, they should go.
Bless you. We'll talk together again, I'm sure. Thanks again for being with us today. Be with us next week for another edition of the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton.